you were actually going to throw away the apple peel, which is probably the best part, you could buy a non-organic apple, but please don't buy apples. That's another subject.
What?
Don't buy apples. The average apple in an American supermarket is 1 year old. 1 year old.
What?
1 year old. That wonderful shiny outside covering is basically some really cool plasticized stuff, and it prevents dehydration. And then you keep it in cold storage, and it lasts forever.
Oh my God. Hello, hello, Heal Squad. We are back with part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Stephen Gundry. If you missed part 1, please check it out. We talked about how farting is actually a good thing. Who knew? Don't tell my husband no. But today he's sharing how there are hidden sugars in our foods that they are slyly hiding from us with a little loophole that you're going to learn about. And that organic, unfortunately, now it doesn't really mean it's that organic anymore. So we're going to dive into what you should buy organic and what you shouldn't, and the shocking reason you should never buy apples again. Guys, this episode is mind-blowing. You are going to definitely look at your grocery list differently after this one. We are also getting into how exposing ourselves to a little bit of nature, get those fingers in the dirt, get that dog licking your face. I know, it sounds crazy, but it could be one of the best things you could do for your immune system and your brain. So without further ado, let's join Dr. Gundry again. Anyway, we're going to get started. But of course, guys, his new book, The Gut-Brain Paradox, is what we are focusing on today. Dr. Gundry, thank you so much for sticking around with us.
Well, thanks again. Yeah, make sure one of my prescriptions that I actually give patients, literally written out on a prescription, is get a dog. And seriously, and I have so many patients that come back with it framed and saying, this is the only prescription that a doctor has ever given me that actually made a difference in my health.
I mean,
And
your mental health and your emotional health, I'm sure, but how on your physical health? Because I
your
was
gut
told
health.
that they carry so many parasites that I had to be worried about Athena and all of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild. I never would have thought of that. So you're saying the opposite.
Oh, yeah, the dogs bring in a complete set of microbiome that we really need. We need dirt microbiome. Forest bathing, we now know, is you are actually picking up the microbiome from the air that is coming up from you trotting along, from the dirt, and the dog is a great way of introducing that.
Should
And
we just be out there digging dirt?
oh, absolutely. We know that, for instance, again, you look at a lot of these super old people, they are farmers, they are herders, and they are constantly digging in dirt. And I use the example, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and that was after the war, and everybody had a victory garden. Fun fact, during World War II, 40% of the food produced in the United States, consumed, was from backyard victory gardens. 40%.
And why is it called a victory garden?
Because victory in the war, it was called a victory
Oh, got it,
garden.
got it, got it.
Do your part. Everything was rationed. Sugar was rationed. Flour was rationed. Do your part for the war effort. So it was called a victory garden. So everybody had these victory gardens, and we had a victory garden, and we had it for my kids, and we'd go out in the garden, and you'd pull a carrot out, and what do you do? Take it inside and spray it with hand sanitizer? No, I don't think so. You brush it off on your pants and you eat it. And as I talk about in the gut brain paradox, what we were doing was actually eating information from bacteria that is incredibly useful.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you look at all these super old people, they're pastoralists and gardeners, and they're always getting inoculated with soil bacteria.
I'm gonna go roll around in my grass today. I
We
was helping plant things the other day.
dogs
My
do.
hands were in the dirt. I'm like, this is a good thing. I know this is a good thing.
Yeah. And nobody, when I go to the farmer's market, I tell my patients, don't take the carrots home or whatever. Just brush them off like mushrooms. You wouldn't think of washing a mushroom. You're supposed to kind of dust them off with a mushroom brush.
Don't wash your produce.
No, if you go to a farmer's market, you want that
Wow.
stuff. Believe it or not, all these plants have a microbiome of their own. Um,
So we have to wash them when we get them from markets. I saw a really disturbing video today that accused Sprouts of spraying their produce with something, I forget what they called it, that helps keep the produce
yeah, yeah,
longer
I'm
lasting. And it's
sure
it's supposed to be organic produce, and then they're spraying all this stuff on it. I'm so depressed. But if
that's
you're
true.
getting it from a farmer's market, you can let the dirt be. I'm gonna tell my dad.
Yeah, no,
Start eating dirt.
yeah. Again, you look at these cultures; they just don't do that. Now, again, most of everything we eat in the United States has been sprayed with glyphosate in one way or another, and that's another horrible topic to talk about. Um, because glyphosate, most people Roundup, was patented by Monsanto as an antibiotic. It wasn't patented as a weed killer, an antibiotic. And yeah,
That's why they get away with it.
yeah. And what we now know, getting back to the original conversation of yesterday, is so Roundup started to be used in the mid 1970s. And if you watch the trajectory of anxiety and depression in America,
Cancer as well.
cancer as well, it goes like this. Obesity goes like this from the 1970s. And what's fascinating is that glyphosate, number one, kills off the tryptophan serotonin pathway making bacteria in our gut selectively. And it allows an overgrowth of bad guys selectively. And it also, by itself, is really good at producing leaky gut. And that's another subject. So, and originally glyphosate was used for genetically modified crops like uh, soybeans,
Corn and
corn. 95% of all corn in America is genetically modified. 95%. So, what happened about 15 years ago is with industrialized agriculture, you've got these multi-million dollar harvesting machines that need to be on a field on a particular day because you got to have efficiency. And I grew up in Nebraska. It's really inefficient to harvest a crop uh, that is alive, that's living. You want it dead, so all the water is gone, and water weight contributes a huge amount to inefficiency of harvesting. So you want a dead cornfield or a dead wheat field. So smart folks said, hey, Roundup is really good at killing plants. And what we could do is we could spray Roundup on everyday wheat, everyday corn, everyday oats, everyday barley, everyday soybeans. It would then be dead, and we could then have these multi-million dollar machines at this field.
grab it all.
And how efficient is that? Now, yeah, how efficient is that? Now, do they wash off the Roundup? Of course not. So, because why not? Because here's the good news. You kill a plant by interfering with what's this really cool name called the shikimate pathway. And it's just so much fun. The shikimate pathway. Uh, Plants use the shikimate pathway to grow. Humans do not use the shikimate pathway. We don't have that pathway. So Monsanto convinced the FDA, hey, this stuff is perfectly harmless to humans. You could eat all you want and it'll never happen to affect you. And the FDA says, okay, that's cool. They didn't bother to tell anybody that bacteria use the shikimate pathway to grow. And because they patented it as an antibiotic because they interfered with the shikimate pathway. So now what happens is we feed all this conventionally grown food, not GMO, to our animals. The glyphosate ends up in their meat and it gets ground up into all of our wheat products, all of our cookies, all of our crackers, all of our processed foods. It then, surprise, kills off all of our good bacteria. And
It's so depressing.
yeah,
It's so
and
depressing, but also, again, why I am so passionate about what I do, because we all need to be aware of what's happening and then take the power back into our own hands as much as we can. And it's just at least being aware is half the battle. And then it's like, okay, well, can I grow something in a pot on my porch? Can I grow tomatoes myself if tomatoes is what I eat a lot of? Or, can I source locally and see my farmers and try to do that? It's really, really overwhelming, but it just reminds us that these powers that be that we have thought were there to protect us are really not. They just aren't. And it's becoming more apparent every single day.
yeah, I like to tell a story. I had one of the former heads of the FDA on my podcast a few years ago, Donald Kessler. And he was the head of the FDA at the time when the food labeling came out on the back of the package, carbohydrates, proteins, sugars. And he got a call from President Reagan. And he said, the Department of Agriculture secretary is in the office right now. I want you to get over here. We got a problem. And he says, okay. And so he gets over there, and the Department of Agriculture secretary says, you can't put this stuff on the label. It will scare, it was the sugar content. It will scare the consumer. And he says, well, yeah, but that's how much sugar is in these products. He says, you can't tell them that. I have to sell this stuff. I'm the Secretary of Agriculture. I have to sell this stuff. And Reagan says, we got a problem here. We got to support our farmers. We got to support our companies. And he says, figure out a way to make this work. And he said, well, tell you what, if there's two sugar molecules bound together with a chemical bond,
We'll call it one.
we'll call it a complex carbohydrate. And we won't have to put it on the label as a sugar. And believe it or not, that's how that
Still
was
to this day.
to this day. So as long as there's a chemical bond between two carbon molecules, two sugar molecules, you don't have to put it on as sugar.
So, as a type 1 diabetic, I could be eating things, and as a type 1 diabetic, you have to count your carbs. And so, are they listing it under general carbs, or is it just completely omitted and now an extra carb I didn't account for?
So here's what you got to do. And it's really easy. And this is what I preach. So you take the total carbohydrates on the label. The next one down is fiber. Our bacteria eat the fiber, we can't. So you subtract the fiber from the total carbohydrates. That gives you the actual total amount of carbohydrates. Now, there are 4 grams of carbohydrates in a teaspoon of sugar. So you take that carbohydrates minus the fiber, take that number, divide it by 4, and that will give you the teaspoons of sugar in that serving size. And I have a bunch of examples in my office, you show them a bowl of cereal. There may be 12, 15 teaspoons of sugar in a heart healthy single serving bowl of raisin bran, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And my patients are shocked, or oatmeal. They're just shocked when they actually look at the actual amount of sugar. And it's all thanks to the Secretary of Agriculture
So you
ago.
take the carbs, subtract
Or
the
carbs.
fiber. So if the bread is 14 grams and the fiber is 4, now you're at 10.
Yeah,
And then you
divide by
take the
4.
sugar. And what do you do exactly with the sugar?
So divide by 4.
So if it's 20 grams of sugar,
Yeah,
you
20
divide 20
grams
by
of
4.
carbohydrates. Yeah, so 20 grams of carbohydrates, of total carbs. Divide
Okay.
by 4, that's 5 teaspoons of sugar. So do not look at the sugar on the label because it has nothing to do with the amount of sugar in that product.
Oh, okay. I'm a little slow.
This is a
But
magician's trick. It
so the bread has 20 carbs. You're dividing the 20 instantly by 4.
by 4.
Okay.
If there's 4 grams of carbohydrates in a teaspoon of sugar. And
Got it.
people,
Okay. So
people
now,
stand a teaspoon of sugar.
got it. So let's break down this math for everybody because I've never heard this as a diabetic.
Oh, that should have been the first thing you ever learned.
I learned to subtract the fiber, but I don't even do that because I feel like I've still seen fluctuations that didn't make sense, and now I understand why they didn't make sense because there's hidden sugars in here. So if the bread is 20 grams of carbs, are you subtracting the fiber first and then dividing?
Correct.
Okay, so 20 grams of carbs. Let's say it's 4 grams of fiber. So now you're at 16
So that's
carbs.
4 teaspoons of sugar. Most bread has 4 teaspoons of sugar. Most.
And now what do I do with that 4?
So divide 4 grams of 4 grams of carbohydrates in a teaspoon of sugar. So
So
you're
now I go and look at the sugar and times it by
don't go
4.
look at that sugar. That's
Oh,
a lie.
okay.
That's the magician's trick. Look, there's no sugar in here because the government says there isn't any sugar in there.
This is bananas. So now I took the 20 grams of carbs, I subtracted the 4 fiber, we ended at 16, and then we divided 4 into 16 and we get 4.
4 teaspoons of sugar.
So that's extra.
Well, yeah, that's actually what's
That's the hidden number, basically, right?
the hidden number.
Oh my God, I can't wait to tell my dad. And I can't wait for everybody to hear this. Guys, I think you probably would have wanted to know this when you did your 4th of July barbecues, but it has come and gone. But summer is far from over, and thank goodness because Macy's is coming in hot with their summer favorite sale. We're talking 20 to 50% off top brands to help you make the most of the sunny season. Now, if you've been following my Instagram lately, you know I'm in my smoothie era, and the key to a next level smoothie is, of course, a good blender. Macy's has this amazing Ninja blender that totally breaks down all the fruit and veggies. So your smoothies are perfect every single time. My dad is living off these smoothies every day at lunch. He's so funny. Also, can we talk about linen? And I know Dr. Gundry probably knows all about this. I have been living in it. It's breathable. It's so good for your skin and your health. It's antibacterial. It has the most healing frequency. I found some adorable linen dresses at Macy's that work for everything, and I linked all of my favorites in the show notes if you need a little inspo. So stock up while you can, 20 to 50% off. Hello. Summer favorite sale runs from July 7th through July 13th at a Macy's near you or macysonline.com. So you blew my mind with this new calculation. I don't understand why every endocrinologist isn't shouting this from the rooftops, but here we go. We learn it here on Heal Squad first with Dr. Gundry. So that is the state of affairs in the world. We have to take matters into our own hands, and it's very frustrating to know that, you're buying organic. I mean, at this point, Dr. Gundry, buying organic, does it really matter?
Part of the scary stuff, the Environmental Working Group and Consumer Reports have tested organic oats in the United States, and almost all organic oats in the United States have Roundup, glyphosate in them. The EPA bans another herbicide for oats. It's not allowed to be sprayed on oats, but
But it is.
but it is. And yeah, but it is. And in fact, during this current administration's first term, the EPA was instructed to double the legal amount that could be sprayed of this herbicide on oats. It's used. How this stuff gets passed is just unbelievable. But oats,
Money.
oats, the stalk grows really high, and oats are very heavy, and the stalk breaks in the wind, and you can't harvest it. So clever people said, hey, there's an herbicide that shortens the growth of the stalk. It doesn't get very high, and it won't break. And that's this toxic herbicide. It causes birth defects, it causes cancer, and it's banned because it's so dangerous. But it really helps harvest crops. So the EPA says, well, if we detect this level, we'll let it go because it's okay. Well, they doubled the level, and it's still much higher than that.
Yeah. And then you wonder why we all have gut issues
Yep.
is because this is what we're eating. So back to the question, should we be wasting our money on organic? Because it's a question I've been asking myself a lot lately, where you see that, like, I think the rule is, and I don't know in all countries or whatever, but I think it was like 200 feet away from anything that wasn't organic is now declared organic. But 200 feet is nothing. And that means that you can't think even your neighbor's soil, if they're using Miracle Grow over there, it's coming over here. Or they're using Roundup, it's coming over here. So it just made me start really questioning this lately. Like, is it worth it for us to be wasting our money on organic? Maybe we shift those funds into, these supplements or something. I don't know.
And again, the rules. There's always a way around a rule, and just to make you really feel awful. In 2007, the Congress passed a law defining what a free-range chicken is and what an organic free-range chicken is. It was a bill introduced by a Republican congressman from Georgia from a chicken growing district. And so you can keep 100,000 chickens in a warehouse. And if you open a door to a 3 yard by 3 yard by 3 yard patch of grass or dirt 5 minutes every 24 hours, and the chicken has the potential, all 100,000 of them, to go outside during that 5 minutes, you can label that chicken free range, even though
Disgusting.
nobody's going outside. Number two, this is the best part. You feed them organic corn and soybeans. If the price of organic corn and or soybeans goes up to twice the price of conventional food during that time that they're growing, you can change over to conventional feed and still label it organic because you meant well. Yes, and yes, because you
I
meant
want
well.
to punch them in the
And
nose,
here's the
all of these
best part.
people.
Here's the best part. We're not allowed to give chickens antibiotics anymore. It's against the law. But if the veterinarian, who is an employee of these corporations, thinks that one chicken in that 100,000 flock of chickens is sick, he's allowed to treat the entire 100,000 chickens with antibiotics to make sure that one chicken is not sick. That's why we hear about all these trade wars with China. Believe it or not, China will not buy our chickens from the United States. Our antibiotic-free chickens, 60% of the chickens that have been tested by the Chinese government have antibiotics in them, and they don't want it.
So, are we going to buy organic anymore?
So nuts are a great thing not to worry about organic. Anything that's enclosed in something you're going to throw away, it's probably just fine to buy conventional. Like an avocado, you're going to throw away the peel. If you were actually going to throw away the apple peel, which is probably the best part, you could buy a non-organic apple, but please don't buy apples. That's another subject.
What?
Don't buy apples. The average apple in an American supermarket is 1 year old. 1 year old.
What?
1 year old.
How?
That wonderful shiny outside covering is basically some really cool plasticized stuff, and it prevents dehydration. And then you keep it in cold storage and it lasts forever.
Oh my God.
I'm old enough to remember when health food stores first had organic produce and organic apples. And they lasted about a week on the shelf because they all just kind of shriveled up,
Yeah.
just the ugliest things, and nobody would buy them.
But they shrivel up on my counter.
Good, because you probably buy them locally in season.
Got it. Okay, so that means
Haven't
wherever I
tried
sourced
to,
those were okay. So if they're not shriveling up, you're screwed.
I've got
Wow.
strawberries in the Santa Barbara farmers market. Within 5 days, they're just pure mold. I've bought organic strawberries at Costco. 2 months later, they're still perfect in my refrigerator.
Wow.
Whoa. See, unfortunately, the good news is that supposedly glyphosate is harmless to humans because of this shikimate pathway. But the bad news is it kills off our microbiome. And the point I keep trying to make people understand is you're only as healthy as your microbiome is vigorous. And we're the home for our microbiome. And one of the things I try to convince people is I have a new patient who's an architect who's 70 years old and a very good architect, very famous.
Hmm.
And I said, look, this is the only, I'm pointing at him. I said, this is the only home that you're ever going to live in. And if you took care of this home the way you took care of the design of this fancy home you made for somebody or this building, then imagine if you put that effort into you, what you could do, because this is it. As far as we know, this is the only one home you're ever going to get.
Right.
And this is the only home your bacteria are ever going to get. And if you take care of them, they will take care of you. And that's one of the fascinating things about you look at these super old people, 95 and above, they have a microbiome that basically looks like a 30-year-old. It's just a teeming, wonderful thing. And they have a microbiome, get ready for this, that will eat xenobiotics. They'll eat plastic. They'll eat hormone disruptors. They they like them. They'll eat gluten. And it's like, son of a gun, that's how these guys got so old. Their microbiome is thriving because of what they gave them, because they were farmers and they were, sheep herders. And that's what's exciting. You look, okay, how did these guys get like that? And then you go, son of a gun, it's their microbiome is a young person's microbiome. It's not an old person's microbiome. They're young because their microbiome is thriving. So first of all, blue zones, and Dan Butner is a friend of mine. Um, I'm the only nutritionist who has ever lived in a blue zone, Loma Linda, California, where I was a professor for most of my career.
Loma Linda is a blue zone?
Yeah, and it's really not a blue zone. Uh,
Okay.
I wrote a whole chapter in Gut Check about blue zones, and blue zones are not blue zones because of what Dan. As Simon and Garfunkel says, a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. The blue zones are blue zones because, for the most part, they are sheep and goat herders, and they're drinking red,
Wine.
and they're eating a ton. I tell you, a ton of sheep and goat yogurts and cheeses, and they also, I shouldn't say this, 95% of them are smokers, and we won't go down that path. But they are.
Wait, wait, we have to. You can't tell me smoking is good.
No, I'm not telling you smoking is good. I'm a heart surgeon. Smoking is bad for you. But what we're missing is that all of these people are smokers. Now,
So, what does that mean?
nicotine is actually one of the most fascinating mitochondrial uncouplers ever discovered. It's the delivery device that's the problem.
I just got the chills. That's why people are doing nicotine patches now.
Of course it is. Now,
And what is the nicotine patch helping with?
again, we could spend years talking about mitochondrial uncoupling. If anybody really wants to hear about mitochondrial uncoupling, Unlocking the Keto Code is one of my books that really dives deep into mitochondrial uncoupling. Long story short, mitochondria are these little energy producing organelles, which are actually ancient bacteria in all of our cells, and they make energy. And it's really hard work to make ATP, and it damages the mitochondria. Mitochondria have pop off valves like a pressure cooker, that if things get too hot and steamy in the mitochondria, they can blow off steam to stop damaging themselves. And that blowing off steam, simplistically, is called mitochondrial uncoupling. And it turns out that to a point, the more you uncouple your mitochondria, the more you allow them to blow off steam, the healthier they are and the healthier you are. And I've got an entire PBS special on it called Just One Thing. And polyphenols, one of my favorite topics, are mitochondrial uncouplers. That's actually how they work. And blue zones eat huge amounts of polyphenol rich foods. Anyhow, so back to nicotine. Nicotine is a really effective mitochondrial uncoupler. Let me just use one example. So, Sardinia, blue zone. Uh, Only the people who live up in the mountains of Sardinia have longevity. The people who live down by the water don't. And you go, well, that's interesting. So, who are the people up in the mountains? They're sheep and goat herders. And Sardinian Pecorino cheese is world famous for just amazing properties. Anyhow, the men, 95% of the men smoke, 25% of the women smoke. And this is true of most of the blue zones. Most people know that women live about 7 years longer than men. You guys are much better at it than us. And there's lots of reasons for that. The men in Sardinia live longer than the women. And that's what actually raises their age, if you will, their longevity. It's the same way in Ikara, Greece. The men are the smokers, the women are about 25% of smokers. The same in Aciroli, where there are more people over the age of 100. 30% of the population is over the age of 100. The men are the smokers, the women smoke less. The uh, longest lifespan of any country in the world is Andorra, this little country between Spain and France up in the Pyrenees Mountains. And these guys are sheep and goat herders. They're all smokers, and they have the longest lifespan of any country. And they also eat huge amounts of fermented sausages. Yeah, it's true, they do. And aren't sausages bad for you? Not if they're fermented. Why? Because of these
Wow.
bacterial products, these postbiotics. So, no, you're not supposed to smoke. Smoking is really bad for you. How do these guys get away with it? I'll tell you how they get away with it.
They get so much sun.
Their vitamin D levels are huge. But number two, they eat huge amounts of antioxidants, antioxidant rich food. Smoking is bad for you because of what's called oxidative stress. And again, as a researcher, I looked into this. Why is it in the good old days, all the people we operated on for heart disease were smokers? And it was a wonderful thing because they were all skinny. And the really cool thing about them was that they had blockages in the first part of their blood vessels. And beyond that, their blood vessels were gorgeous. And it was really easy for us. They were skinny. We could jump a bypass and, wonderful. We'd have 3 cases done by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Why were these blockages there? Well, these blockages would occur where these blood vessels would bend. And you break collagen. Collagen's the in thing. And normally we have vitamin C in our diet that reknits this collagen. You have to have vitamin C to fix broken collagen. Smokers have no vitamin C because they use it up in oxidative stress. And it turns that's why smokers have such heavy wrinkles because they've used up all their vitamin C, which would normally repair the collagen damage. So these guys have mitigated the negative effect. And don't misunderstand me. There are some really bad effects of smoking. We're just beginning to realize the same thing's happening with marijuana smokers. There are some really bad effects of smoking marijuana. I can tell you as a lung surgeon and as a heart surgeon, really bad effects. And we're just now getting the data, and it's scary because it's someone's
Wow.
doing it. But anyhow, so
I smell another episode. Wow. I really like how you coined it. It's the delivery process. So it's not the product. It's like you'll talk about marijuana being bad, but like if you take CBD oil, different delivery system.
delivery.
So that's all fascinating. Um, I would love to have you come back and talk about the nicotine patch and the marijuana and how that's kind of being used, and how it's actually hurting us as well. All right, friends, if this episode blew your mind like it blew mine, and you think your friends need to hear about it, please Don't hoard this episode. Share it with your friends and your family. Let them know what they need to be knowing. And in the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present. Heal Squad, we have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.